Hello, Benjamin. How are you today?
I am having so much fun. I am busy thinking about things, and my brain is flying 90 different directions at 90,000 miles.
So
Um,
normal.
yeah, well, it's a bit more than normal because it ends up they're all going in different directions. Normally, I try to have my brain fly like a flock of birds in the same direction. This is
Okay.
more this is more of a chaotic sort of everything's going everywhere. So we'll see how podcasting goes because I might not be good at it today.
We'll see. We'll see. So today, I think we pre-agreed. We actually organized content beforehand, um, about an hour before we had a discussion on what we'd talk about. And today, we want to talk about something that's impacting us a lot, and we're looking at a lot of things around this at the moment. We've thought about this problem for quite a while, and the more we think about it, the more we seem to run into it just about everywhere in our industry, Benjamin, as a big constraint. And that is concentrate grade. So today, what we're going to talk about is concentrate grade or product specification, if you like, if you're not a concentrate producer, and how how locked we are into it and how we think it's a sacred cow. Um, but because it's a sacred cow, other things suffer, namely recovery. So today, hopefully, we're going to give a bit of a contrarian point of view. It's probably going to upset some marketing people, some trading people, maybe even some smelter owners, but that's what we're all about, slaughtering some sacred cows.
Yeah, and this work came out of two basic things that I'm focused on. Um, one of which is I'm because I always get fired, and let's be clear, I get fired way too much. Um, I have worked every possible job in this industry, because coupled with getting fired, I have a very low dopamine response. So once I've become an expert at something, the day after, I have no desire to ever do that job again. So I become an expert, get to the point where I fully understand it, and then I'm like, nope, does not interest me at all. You can't pay me enough money to do that again, which is weird because a week before I would have done it for free. This is not an economic, rational set of decisions, to be clear. Um, but coming back to this conversation, there's basically three core metrics that people focus on. One is reserve. What is the mining reserve? What is the metal contained in the reserve? And some geologist comes through and they decide what is waste and what is ore and where the lines are. And on a recent project, I think we discovered that the waste rock dam was richer than major chunks of the ore body.
Yes.
So it was an interesting point of view where the waste rock dam was actually mineable before the tailings dam. Because the waste rock dam was definitely richer than the tailings dam on a dry metric ton basis.
You know what? That's something I think probably does happen more often, but we'll file that one for later discussion.
That's a later discussion. So that's the first one, waste rock versus ore versus tailings from that perspective. Then we get to the second process, which is you metallurgists come up with a spec. You come up with a concept of what the product's going to look like. You hand it off to some finance person who looks like me. You hand me 6 files because you don't have the cojones to actually come up with one answer.
Depends.
It depends, and I take the best one. So you give me 6 different files, and I take the best spec, which I then go off and get drunk with someone from Trafigura or Glencore. They write me a $100 million prepayment check, and we agree on a spec with all these lovely penalties that no one really understands except the Trafigura Glencore trader that set up the deal. And there's $100 million break fee that I have to come up with. I have to pay back the loan to break the offtake.
Hmm.
And then, as the CEO, CFO, I go back to you as metallurgist and say, here's what you have to produce. And you're stuck there producing a spec that wasn't optimal because you probably ran less than 10 results when you did your original process.
Now,
I'm being honest. And you
you
did
are.
not run them across the entire ore body because you certainly did not run composites across the ore body or let alone do a block over stage over years. And the geologist had no input into this entire conversation. So they really gave you a block model that was never really what was the term one of our friends gave us? It was never really tied to metallurgy or tied to mineralogy. It was a block model tied to metals content and others which things.
Which core holes had nice shiny bits of mineralization in them?
Yeah, but there was no actual mineralization work done. Let's be clear. It was done
You're being very harsh. I think we're actually getting better at this now as an industry.
I think we're getting better at this, but these three silos means that we are fundamentally an inefficient industry.
That's
Because
fair.
I'm not sure that what Glencore negotiated is what the smelter actually wants, because
Yes.
it's what Glencore wants. I am not sure what Glencore negotiates what you as a metallurgist wants. How many operations have you been on where you could massively have increased revenue if you could have disregarded the spec slightly?
Yes. Massively increased recovery and by that revenue. Quite a number.
Okay.
Quite a number.
And how many of those operations, I'm just going to ask another question of you. How many of those operations was the $30 or $50 per dry metric ton of freight differential for the additional tonnage material back to your costs?
Zero.
How many of those was
Not that I looked at it at that stage in that much depth, but in
zero?
reality,
Well,
it's so small compared to the value of a ton of the product, it just wouldn't have shown up.
freight, unless you're doing iron ore, spec is not a rational optimization. Let's be clear about that.
Ooh.
It's 0 times does freight matter. Second point, which has to be figured out, sorry, as I check the clock because of lovely people in my life. Anyways, the second point is, first one is freight doesn't matter. The second one is additional, if you shipped 30% additional product, but made 20% more money, 9 out of 10 times the mine would have an NPV that's billions of dollars larger.
Yep.
Because value, the stock market does not value us based on tons of concentrate shipped. The stock market values us on tons of metal shipped.
Yep.
The stock market doesn't care if the lot size is 20,000 tons versus 10,000 tons. The actual owners have no understanding. So we have this incredibly inefficient business where there's billions, if not tens of billions of tons of carbon footprint lost for imperfect specs. There's billions of dollars of revenue lost per year because of stupid specs.
But before you go further, let's explain that. A lot of concentrators, especially, have whole circuits to clean up the product
Yep.
to make it meet these specs. And quite often, just because there's a liberation issue there, you have to regrind and regrind finer and finer and finer so you meet these specs. And that uses a heck of a lot of energy, albeit on a relatively small stream. It still does show up. And that's what you're talking about, carbon footprint. Yes, Benjamin?
Two things. The first one is you have the lovely regrind. And then
Yes.
you go to Trevor Sparks. We all love Trevor Sparks because he's such a
We
lovely
love Trevor. Trevor's awesome.
Trevor's awesome. Shout out to Trevor. And Trevor's going to tell you on this ultra fine material, how long is it going to take to turn this into a shippable concentrate? And if you create bug dust that loves water, that's water in love because it micron size is so damn.
Hydrophilic is what you want.
I know I want to say hydrophilic.
But it's generally going to be hydrophobic.
Yeah,
so you're getting too scientific for you now.
But it becomes hydrophilic once you actually grind it to the point that we're producing these concentrates at. And you're then required to ship it at an 8% moisture. And it naturally wants to be 20% because of how fine it is. You're now spending another 10 kilowatts, 12 kilowatts per dry metric ton of concentrate just to dewater the stuff.
I think you're thinking of a different word at this point. I think you're talking about hygroscopic.
Hygroscopic, yes. Thank you. I apologize.
Or maybe not.
I think
send us a message and complain about our lack of respect for Latin English words
around metallurgy.
We did explain them in fairness.
Yeah.
So let's keep.
So you have the footprint of the production, which goes up the more you refine these specs. Then you have the added value in use. A ton of zinc saves 700 or 1,000 tons of carbon. So if I lose 10% recovery for the privilege of optimizing these carbon specs, I'm going to lose per ton of zinc I sell 70 tons of carbon footprint purely to meet the concentrate spec. The zinc industry alone to meet concentrate spec costs the world 700 million tons of carbon per year. That's the magnitude of the problem.
Wow.
By the way, the total carbon footprint of the zinc industry is less than 30 or 40 million tons.
Yeah.
So this one little environmental problem, which is driven between a lack of information understanding between four parties: the smelter, the trader, the miner, the metallurgist, and five parties, and the geologist.
And the geologist.
If those five people could sit in the room together, and if they could have a rational carbon, energy, cost, value, spec conversation, we could potentially reduce global warming across all industries by 10%.
That's a big call. How did you get from 10%? The mining industry doesn't even output or consume 10% of the world's carbon if you take out the coal people.
So let's flip from zinc to copper, because I'm just feeling feisty today. Every ton of copper that we can mine and ship and install in solar power saves
Okay.
3 and 9,000 tons of carbon over its first 25 years of use.
Okay.
1,000 to 9,000 tons.
So,
if I could,
you're
yep,
you're arguing for energy transition metals, or metals that are needed for the energy transition. It's not just the input of the CO2 to the CO2 emissions to create them in a product form. It's actually their use down the track.
yep. But if you look at zinc, aluminum, copper,
Yep.
nickel, lithium,
Lead.
no lead. If
That
you
makes
look
me
at
sad.
both of these metals, the carbon footprint in use of savings in use is far greater than the carbon footprint of production.
Okay, so if we want to stop global warming, our core metric as miners, we really have a duty to make as much metal as possible. So there is sufficient metal to go into these technologies.
No, make as much metal as possible with the minimum ore body use.
Oh, okay. And that's where we started off, ore body utilization.
Ore body utilization. If you just make as much metal as possible, you produce very inefficient specs, because the number one constraint for climate change is not our access to technology. We're finding technology solutions. It's not our access to capital. Solar plus batteries is the cheapest form of electricity on the grid today, anywhere in the world, with the exception of the Nordics or other places where winter just sucks. Okay, but call it 80% of the world, solar plus batteries is the cheapest form of energy in the world.
Yep.
So the fact is, it's not capital, it is lack of the raw materials to build the infrastructure for these new technologies. And
Okay.
that material
Yep.
is driven by three things: waste versus ore,
Yep.
concentrate spec,
Yep.
and smelter spec.
Yep.
This is
But
all three.
you pointed out before, one of the reasons those three things are issues is because there's a lack of communication between geologists, mineral processors, we'll call them, smelter metallurgists, and traders. You
I'm
did.
gonna
Trust
I'm
me.
gonna
I know you
I
don't have short-term memory.
I agree with that statement. I think I want to change the word from lack of communication to lack of mutual understanding.
Yes, no, that's fine. Lack of mutual understanding is fine. But I'm going to come back and argue that one of those four groups is promoting a lack of understanding because that's how they make money.
I'm going to argue that all of those groups are promoting a lack of understanding, because that's how they make money.
Oh, okay.
The
Pray tell.
geologist, the geologist wants to own as much IP as possible and doesn't trust the metallurgist. The metallurgist wants to own as much of IP as possible and doesn't trust the CEO. The CEO wants to own as much of the IP as possible and doesn't trust the metallurgist or the trader. The trader doesn't trust the metallurgist or the CEO or the smelter and wants to own as much of the IP as possible, and the smelter thinks everyone's out to get them.
Okay.
So I think that what you have is you have these 4 or 5 silos that literally cannot share a room because they all have such varyingly different KPIs.
And they all speak different languages.
Yeah. So like I will get something that's completely off spec and someone will come to me and say, "You can never sell this." And I'll be like, "Cool, why can't I sell this?" And then I will do something really stupid. I will take the spec they gave me, I will throw it into ChatGPT, and I'll ask ChatGPT, "How do I fix this spec for this amount of tonnage with this setup?" And 9 out of 10 times, ChatGPT will come back to me and say, "Well, if you're willing to go for a 2% lower concentrate grade, you can add this chemical, mix it in a bloody cement mixer, and that will stabilize that problem for
Cool.
$70 a ton." So the moment you're not hyper
Just
focused,
disclaimer, don't try that at home, people.
yeah,
You
because
probably need permitting before you do that,
and
and
things like
SGSs and other things.
yeah, we're not saying that every off-spec concentrate can be solved, but we're saying things like moisture, things like other things that need to be solved. There are known solutions for relatively immaterial amounts of capital. And before you tell me that $10 million matters, keep in mind that a lot of the stuff we're looking at trades for $4,000 or $5,000 a ton as a concentrate.
Mm.
You get a decent concentrate that's got 60 or 70 grams of gold in it and 24% copper and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And you quickly have $5,000 to play with per dry metric ton. The numbers get massive really, really quickly. And optimizing a $5,000 product is not the same thing as optimizing a $30 per ton ore body because you're only touching 1% of the total product. Optimization gets really cheap. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you optimize to the wrong spec, you are forced to leave metal behind. So if I force you, Ben, to take
Yes.
a concentrate that would naturally be a really easy, and I'm going to make up some numbers which are going to offend everyone in the industry. So these numbers are made up from this perspective right now. These are not perfect. Let's say that you can get off of one stage of flotation with a secondary at, let's say, 80 microns without any regrind. Does that sound about right?
That wouldn't be that challenging, yeah.
A
Depends on the mineral and where.
20% concentrate grade for copper.
Okay.
Okay. And you got logistics of $100 a ton
Yep.
from mine to mill. And you got a 98% payable because it's copper today. So you're going to get paid of that 20%, you're going to pay 19 and a half. Option 2 is you have some deal you did with some major trader and you're required to ship a 27% concentrate spec. To get to the 27%, you as a metallurgist are going to give up 10% recovery or 5% recovery because it's no longer a natural concentrate grade for your product. So now even if you pay the same 98%, you're now in the 93% or 92% economic recovery number because no one ever accounts for that 7% because it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
But let's be clear,
It was never there.
that 7% on a million ton a year or even 100,000 a year operation is 7,000 tons of payable metal. 7,000 tons at $12,000 a ton is a tiny, call it 85, 90 million bucks. It's not a lot of money. It's just enough to pay my bills for at least a week.
Put your kids through private school.
Yes, absolutely. So we're taking, and that doesn't sound like a lot against a project that's grossing 100,000 tons is $1.3 billion. But $70 million of lost money on $1.3 billion for 6 out of 7 of our clients doubles the gross margin. Sorry, the net margin. Let me rephrase that statement. For 6 out of 7 of our clients, I will get this exactly right because I know there's a CFO who's going to get angry at me. On a triple net basis, i.e., after everything, including the corporate jet, $70 million on a $1.3 billion project doubles your overall margin. It doesn't double the gross, but after you've paid for everyone, including the corporate jet, and by the way, my personal Iceland Air business class ticket, which is you're still upset about, it still doubles the corporate profits.
That's only because no one flies from Portland.
No, I'm going to take $800 business class tickets to Europe all day long. Thank you very much.
Okay. So now Benjamin has offended metallurgists, geologists, definitely traders. And if traders, you're really angry at Benjamin for this, make sure you assassinate him when I'm not standing next to him. CFOs, who else did you offend today?
Geologists.
Geologists. Definitely marketing people.
Smelter owners.
Yeah, yeah, they're probably a little offended, but I think marketing people, traders, and CFOs are definitely offended. So it's a contrary viewpoint. It's not illogical, and we've looked at this, and we've seen this, and we've modelled it out time and time again. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but first you've got to. I'm going to mix about 10 metaphors here. No, we'll start that again. We won't say there's more than one way to skin a cat. We believe, and we've seen this time and time again, it's absolutely possible to improve recovery, to improve that profitability, if you start questioning and playing with those recoveries, the grade specs that we've seen, we've taken as things carved in gold for so many years. It might be time to relook at that, because if we're going to fix the energy transition, we need the metal. If we want to be a more profitable industry, we need the metal. It's a win for everybody. On that note, cool. If you don't agree with what we've said, please jump up on LinkedIn, tell us about it, argue with us. Even better, invite us in. We'll come have a look at your operation and see what we think can be done.
So the question, Ben, is this. Do
Yes.
we end with a 5-step plan to improve any concentrate grade for free, or do we have people contact us for work?
Ooh.
Do you want to wait 5 steps in less than 3 minutes? Or, the person who's watching our feed currently and giving us feedback as we're doing this says I'm not allowed to do that. So
maybe we save that for another episode, Benjamin, for some more fun and games.
I don't know if we should do it. I don't know if we necessarily need to give away that IP.
Tell us, get on, put a comment. We've seen this podcast posted. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you agree. Tell me if you're going to assassinate Benjamin. I love traders. And yeah.
Lie.
More next time. We hope this at least made you think and didn't upset you too much.
Cheers.
See you later.